MSW Media.
So yeah, now it's clean up on aisle 45 time. And for a long while yet, it is going to be clean up on aisle 45.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 228 of Clean Up on Aisle 45. It's Wednesday, June 4th, 2025. I'm Allison Gill.
Hey, AG, Harry Dunn here.
Welcome back to the Americas, my friend.
You know what? As I joked with you before we started recording, it's great to be back stateside. And I was like, well, actually, wait a minute. This place kind of sucks lately, so I don't know if it's great to be back or not, you know. But no, it is great to be back in familiar land and have access to some of my closest friends and everybody listening here today. So glad to be back.
Yeah, now tell everybody where you went. It's been a big old secret.
It has. You know, I was in Ukraine and I flew into Warsaw and I met with a group of like-minded individuals. And it was organized through a group that I'm happy to talk to people about individually should they, want to help out with that. But though we're not going to put that out there publicly, but I'll share with people individually and offline should they want to know more about it. But we flew into Warsaw, and from there we met with a convoy that came from Helsinki in Finland, and we made the long trek from Warsaw, driving about 15 to 20 vehicles that included an ambulance, lots of off-roading four-wheel drive trucks, vans, a fire truck, and they were stockpiled with aid, humanitarian aid, and aid that helps save Ukrainian lives that would be deployed to the front lines. And we drove across the border all the way. Our first night, we stopped in Lviv, which is a city outside of Kyiv. Kyiv is the capital, but we stopped in Lviv. We met with some people there. We delivered some aid there. And then we got up the next morning and we hit the road and we drove to Kyiv. And literally, as soon as we got into Kyiv, the air raid sirens started going off. That was not a nightly occurrence, but maybe about 4 or 5 different instances while we were there. Sometimes during the day, most times during the fall of night. One thing is cool about Ukraine, well, not cool. I say cool, but none of this shit is cool. I mean, Russia just go to fuck home and the war's over. But one thing that stood out, they have curfew at midnight, and everybody has to be off the streets. There are no exceptions, not like grandmothers going to go get emergency supplies for their grandkids or the baby needed formula, or there's no excuses. Nobody's allowed to be out on the street past midnight. And what used to happen, and the way I understand it, is there was a lot of backlash. So they kind of paused this practice, but anybody that was caught was immediately put in a van, taken to training and shipped off to the front lines. No matter who you were. So that went on for a while there. But there was a lot of backlash about it. So I think they relaxed that practice. But even people, and one of the questions I asked, well, what about the homeless people out there? Well, there's nobody homeless there because anybody that they picked up was literally out on the front lines. So, I had the opportunity to meet with some of the soldiers, and out of all the aid and things that they get, they truly appreciate it. But they said the thing that they appreciate the most is our presence and knowing that we support them. A lot of times they feel forgotten out there. This is from soldiers' mouths. These are from the people that are on the front lines. We had an opportunity to talk with them, several of them, not just like one person, but several of them. And they said they all expressed the sentiment that they just felt some type of immense pleasure and gratitude that we were there, just showing that Ukraine is not forgotten. And I tell you what, it was such an eye-opening experience for me. I learned educational stuff, like what was happening. But as far as life lessons, the thing that stood out to me the most is their resilience. We hear this phrase all the time. It could be worse, and like, let's be 100% clear. It's horrible here right now. It sucks here. People's rights are being taken, and there's let's be 100. It sucks here, but I don't like using cliche shit. And I know this the bonus. It's not the bonus, so y'all get a couple extra 4-letter words from me. But these people's lives are literally being on the verge of they're on the verge of existing or not existing every single day. Them as a people, as a country, and it's just they haven't stopped. They still drive around. The kids still go to school. Families are still out. Restaurants were full. And this is in Kyiv while air raid sirens are going off, and their resilience or just the fortitude they have to keep on pressing on and fighting on. And, just it was remarkable. And I took a little bit from that. It's just resiliency. And I think we could learn a lot from them. And I hope to put on display what some of those lessons that I learned from just their resilience alone. Just to not quit, not give up, and not even just that, but just to fight even just a little bit harder. So Slava Ukraini. Yeah.
And talk about resilience. I mean, they were in the middle of executing an 18-month plan led personally by Zelensky called Operation Spiderweb, where they deployed Trojan horses full of drones to places very deep into Russia, all the way across to the other side of the country. From where Ukraine is, at one spot, destroyed 40% of their bombers and caused $7 billion in damage, and that's just incredible. And I can't help but wonder if like Hegseth, who we're going to talk about a little bit later, and some folks in the White House weren't pissed that Ukraine didn't tell us that they were going to do this. And I'm glad that they didn't.
I'm glad that they didn't either. And another thing about that drone attack, we got to go to the facility where they make these drones, where they armor these vehicles, these trucks, these vans, and you just get to see them. And one thing that they talk about a lot there is cost effectiveness. Cost effectiveness. So like you just said, that was what, $4 billion worth of destruction. $7 billion worth of destruction. Probably with, and I'm just throwing a ballpark figure out, probably with $5 million worth of drones, right?
Right.
So not only does it destroy $7 million, think about this. It destroys them before they can, those bombers that they destroyed can cause any damage.
Right.
So not only $7 billion. So $7 billion, how much the drones cost. The bombers cost. So think about the amount of destruction, the dollars amount in destructions that those bombers could cause. So even I say Ukraine, because you stay in solidarity, if Ukraine shoots those down, that's a defense that costs money. A Patriot battery costs a lot of money to deploy a Patriot to shoot something like that down. So it's how Ukraine wins the war and how they've been winning is being very cost efficient. And while I was walking through the warehouse, I just started, me and a lot of other people there were like, if the Republicans are talking about, well, why is Ukraine getting so much more? What are they doing with the money? Bring your ass over here and see. Bring your ass over there and see what they are doing to survive. And obviously they won't. But, we relate the message very clear. America, most of Americans stand with you. You are not forgotten. And hell, I'm going back. I don't know when, but I definitely will go back and help out again.
Good. Well, that's awesome. And to see where those drones are made and to talk to people on the front lines, that's really incredible. So thanks for being over there. Thanks for helping deliver that aid.
Absolutely.
So important.
It was an honor of a lifetime. And, I posted one of the certificates that I got on Blue Sky, just how much that it meant to me, just showing their appreciation from one of their brigadier generals, or I forgot their titles. But it was one of the commanders of the squads that we met with. And it's just very meaningful, and I can't wait to get it framed. So.
Well, that's amazing. Amazing, my friend. That's why we were like, when we recorded the bonus on Thursday, we were like trying to do it between air raid sirens. And we couldn't tell anybody that that's why we were like ducking in and out.
Had to be very quick with it. And that's another thing. Like when the air raid sirens goes off, I think the local Wi-Fi shuts down or something, communication slightly jammed, and it's kind of like a big cluster. But whatever it takes for them to survive, it was worth it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing all that, and thanks for going over there.
Yes.
We have a lot to get to today here on Cleanup, including a story out of Fulton County, Georgia, about some Democratic election wins, and Tish James's lawsuit. You know, she sued with a bunch of other attorneys general to stop Trump's tariffs. So we're going to talk about that.
Yeah, plus we have Trump's pick for special counsel to replace Hampton Dellinger. Remember that the guy with the cool name that we like, Hampton Dellinger. More on the turmoil surrounding Pete Hegseth, and some parting statements from Capitol Police, my former chief, Thomas Manger.
Yeah, and the supplemental motion to dismiss the case against Milwaukee Judge Hannah Dugan. A lot of it's repeat, but we'll go over it. And while we don't have any updates on Rudy or Linwood or the Pillowman, I was able to dig up an embarrassing loss for Steve Bannon. So we'll talk about that. But first, we want to say thank you to our new patrons, including Steve Morris, Maura Metzler, Tony Acock, Maria Mamolidi, Melissa Bunzadal, I hope I'm saying that right, Amanda Roberts, and Allison Brisberg. Thank you so much for becoming patrons. Really appreciate you. Loved seeing you on the happy hour call. It was pretty awesome with Harry Dunn and Andy McCabe and Dana Goldberg. And I know we're going to see a lot of you at the post No Kings March meet and greet, which private location. Yet to be disclosed. It's not going to be disclosed to the public, actually. It's just for the patrons who signed up. So I look forward to seeing everybody there. You can join the club if you want. Support independent media, get invites to these events, and all that good stuff. Episodes ad-free and early. You can head to patreon.com/aisle45pod, AISLE45POD, and we will read, within reason, whatever name you come up with on the air. So let's talk about some comings and goings in the Trump regime. First up from Barb McQuaid at MSNBC. Picking Paul Ingrassia to lead the U.S. Office of Special Counsel is not like putting the fox in charge of the henhouse. It's more like setting fire to the whole farm. On Thursday, Trump nominated the former far-right podcast host to lead the important, albeit little-known federal agency office. OSC is not to be confused with the special counsel position recently occupied by Jack Smith, who was appointed under federal regulations by Merrick Garland to investigate Trump for alleged violations of law. Instead, OSC is an independent agency created by Congress as part of the Civil Service Reform Act in the wake of Watergate. The office protects whistleblowers and other federal workers from unlawful employment practices. OSC also enforces the Hatch Act. That's the law that bars political activity in the federal workplace. The nature of the work demands an experienced investigator who is scrupulously apolitical. And Ingrassia is anything but.
Speaking of that Hatch Act, when the last time that thing has been enforced?
Yeah, I wish they would actually, about the Hatch Act.
Like they literally use that stuff like toilet paper. But I think that's also when Donald Trump held a rally at the White House during his first term.
He held the Republican National Convention.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Yeah. But I digress. 38-year-old Ingrassia has been a lawyer for only 3 years. He previously worked at the Claremont Institute, the same far-right think tank that brought us John Eastman, a key alleged architect of the 2020 fake elector scheme. His views on the January 6th riot are extreme, even by MAGA standards, which is crazy. In December, Ingrassia called for not only pardons of the January 6th defendants, but also for $1 million per family in reparations. Yes, let me read that again. And the January 6th defendants, $1 million per family in reparations. Like, unbelievable. He advocated for Trump to expressly name in a public proclamation any judge and prosecutor involved in the J6 scam and call on them to resign from their offices and pressure Congress to undertake impeachment proceedings against them if they do not cooperate. And Ingrassia also urged Congress to make January 6th a national holiday, to place today's events in their proper historical context as a peaceful protest against a great injustice affecting our electoral systems. And Ingrassia has referred to former Vice President Mike Pence as a traitor who belongs in the 9th circle of hell.
Okay, but not for that day.
Sounds like a nice guy. Sounds like a nice guy.
Wow. So that is super extreme as far as January 6th goes. In February, Trump fired the prior head of OSC, as you know, Hampton Dellinger, a Joe Biden appointee who was only 1 year into a 5-year term, which is set by Congress, by the way. Dellinger challenged his removal, alleging it violated federal law that prohibits termination except for inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance. A court had found Dellinger's dismissal unlawful, but Dellinger dropped his lawsuit when an appeals court declined to reinstate him. And Trump announced Friday that he has fired the director of the National Portrait Gallery. Super, threat to national security, Kim Saget, whom he called highly partisan. The dismissal marks the first action Trump has taken against the Smithsonian since the executive order he signed earlier this year that promised to eliminate divisive narratives and the anti-American ideology from the museum and research body, which is partially funded by the federal government. Now, the portrait gallery is just pictures of politicians and presidents, and like I don't even understand.
It's literally all it is. It's just pictures, but whatever. We digress. It is unclear if the president has the authority to dismiss Saget. The Smithsonian programming is not under the purview of the executive branch, and the personnel decisions for senior level Smithsonian Museum positions are made by Bunch. Neither the museum, the institution, nor the White House immediately responded to requests for comment.
Yeah, he's just firing people that he doesn't have the authority to fire. And this is all outlined in Project 2025, by the way. Trump's unprecedented order was foreshadowed by a November 25th Wall Street Journal opinion piece co-written by Mike Gonzalez from the Heritage Foundation, one of the contributors to Project 2025, which called for the president to retake control of the Smithsonian's museums. The institution, Gonzalez wrote, had forsaken their mission of spreading knowledge and instead are trying to decolonize society. Whatever the hell that means.
Whatever the hell that means. Unbelievable, man. And you know what? I bet you he doesn't even know what she does. He doesn't know her job description. He doesn't know what she's responsible for. He just knows that he didn't appoint her and she's not a Trump guy, you know.
This is part of taking over the arts, right? Why they took over the Kennedy Center, why they defunded the National Endowment of the Arts, why they're trying to defang and defund Radio Free Europe, Voice of America, Radio Free Liberty, trying to take money away from NPR and PBS. And so all these lawsuits will eventually wind their way up to the Supreme Court, which, as we know now, is thinks of Donald Trump as a king. So we'll see what they say.
We'll see what happens with that. So.
Yeah. All right. We've got more stories, but we have to take a quick break. So everybody stick around. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody. It's AG. If you're like me and you've tried just about everything to help you chill out and sleep or to help you with post-workout pain, I've got something for you. It's CBD from CB Distillery. And it's the only thing that's consistently working for me, just like millions of others who use CBD, because it works. My personal favorite is the pain relief stick. After a long day or tough yoga session, I just rub it on my neck and my shoulders, and then I've got this other little muscle problem in my calf, and it just melts away the tension in minutes. I didn't expect it to be fast or effective, but it is, and now it's part of my nightly routine. I also keep the sleep gummies on hand, yes, especially during stressful weeks. I don't feel knocked out or anything like I did with other products. I just drift off and wake up feeling normal, which is honestly a miracle. Over 90% of customers, 90% report better sleep. And I want to thank CB Distillery for sponsoring this episode. You can get 25% off your entire purchase at cbdistillery.com using promo code CLEANUP, all one word. CB Distillery makes it super easy. Their CBD is clean, it's premium quality, it's designed to work. So whether you need help with sleep, stress, pain, focus, or even something for your pets, they've got CBD cookies for your pets. They have you covered. With more than 2 million satisfied customers and 100% money-back guarantee. So there's no risk here. It is no surprise they've become the go-to source for trusted CBD. So if you're still searching for relief, it's past time to try CB Distillery. And for a limited time, like I said, you can save 25% off your entire purchase. Just head to cbdistillery.com and use promo code CLEANUP. That's cbdistillery.com, promo code CLEANUP. One last time, cbdistillery.com. Specific product availability depends on individual state regulations.
All right, y'all, we are back. And look, we got some good news. We celebrate good news in this day and age, and it's out of Fulton County, Georgia.
Whoop, whoop.
This is from Democracy Docket. The Fulton County, Georgia Board of Commissioners voted 5-2 Wednesday to reject the GOP's nomination of two prominent election deniers to the County Board of Elections.
Ah, good.
Julie Adams, who currently serves on the Fulton County Board of Elections and Registration, was at the center of the May 2024 controversy when she refused to certify the county's primary election results. Adams, a prominent election denier with ties to the far-right election integrity network, EIN, refused to certify her county's primary election because she claimed she didn't have access to all the information about the voting process in order to verify the results. Sounds like she needs to step down from her job then.
Yeah. Now, Adams filed 3 unsuccessful lawsuits to get sensitive election data, including a list of all registered voters, voter check-in lists from each precinct, and lists of all voters who requested, received, or returned absentee ballots in order for her to certify the election. In rejecting Adams's reappointment to the Fulton County Elections Board, several members of the Board of Commissioners cited her refusal to certify the election, subsequent frivolous lawsuits, and her ties to EIN and the Tea Party Patriots as reasons for why they didn't vote for her. And here's a quote: "It's not possible to work with folks trying to sow discord and chaos." That's what board member Mo Ivory said during the board's meeting before voting to reject Adams' reappointment.
But Adams wasn't the only GOP appointee rejected by the Board of Commissioners. Jason Frazier, another prominent election denier and right-wing activist, was rejected in Wednesday's meeting to serve on the Fulton County Board of Elections and Registration. In August 2024, Frazier filed a lawsuit against the Fulton County Election Board, falsely claiming that they failed to properly maintain the county voter rolls and respond to voter challenges. The lawsuit was voluntarily dismissed in September 2024.
No.
In rejecting Frazier's nomination, Fulton County Commissioner Dana Barrett cited Frazier's egregious record of voter suppression.
Good for them. Frazier didn't take his rejection by the board lightly, saying on Twitter he will pursue legal action and then probably promptly drop the lawsuit after he has to spend money on depositions. Dems on the Fulton Board of Commissioners voted no to both Republican Board of Election nominations today. Both Julie and I were nominated unanimously by the Fulton County GOP. We shall not give up. Okay, well, you've lost.
Well, bring it. Yeah, I like to say you're losing in court, you're losing everywhere. All right, and New York Attorney General Tish James released a statement last week about her victory in a lawsuit blocking Trump's tariffs. She said, "The law is clear. No president has the power to single-handedly raise taxes whenever they like. These tariffs are a massive tax hike on working families and American businesses that would have led to more inflation, economic damage to businesses of all sizes, and job losses across the country if allowed to continue. This decision is a major victory for our efforts to uphold the law and protect New Yorkers from illegal policies that threaten American jobs and the economy."
Yes, Attorney General James, who is a badass, and the coalition of a ton of other Democratic attorneys general, sued the Trump administration for unlawfully imposing tariffs under the IEEPA through executive orders, social media posts, and agency orders. James and the coalition argued that the president has no such power under the IEEPA. However, since February, President Trump has been unilaterally imposing sweeping tariffs against America's closest trading partners and pretty much every country on earth, including penguins. The United States Court of International Trade ruled that the law does not authorize any of the tariffs imposed by the Trump administration under the IEEPA, including tariffs on China, Mexico, Canada, and the European Union. The court found the tariffs to be unlawful and ordered they be preliminarily blocked. Now, so a similar ruling came down in the D.C. District Court. So they had one in the International Trade Court, they had one in the D.C. District Court, and the Trump administration was trying to say the one in the D.C. District Court didn't have jurisdiction. It had to be in the trade court. But the judge said, no, it doesn't, because regulating imports and exports under the IEEPA, it doesn't have anything to do with tariffs. He's like, we've looked at the language of the IEEPA, and the word tariff doesn't ever appear. And so because this doesn't have anything to do with tariffs, I don't have to send it to the International Trade Court. I have jurisdiction here, and I have the jurisdiction to issue a preliminary injunction. Now, that went up to something called the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals. So, we have like the First Circuit, Second Circuit, all the numbered circuits, 11th Circuit. Then we have the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. There's something extra called the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals, which hears appeals from the International Trade Court, for example. And so the Federal Circuit Court of Appeals consolidated the international trade one, the Tish James one, and the one brought in D.C. District Court that was brought by like 4 small businesses that are saying our prices are going through the roof. We won't be able to exist anymore. Consolidated those cases and then put a temporary 7-day administrative stay on blocking the tariffs. So they stopped the stoppage while they consider a longer term stay or to allow the case to go forward or to allow the injunction to stay in place pending appeal. So we will bring you an update on that. So now that both of these cases are consolidated.
Yeah, but the standing argument has been resolved, though. It's going to be held in this court, though. That was their argument, the Trump administration's argument that this is the wrong venue for this argument to even be heard, and that's been settled.
Well, I'm not really sure, like when I'm looking at it, because the DC district guy was pretty clear saying, I have jurisdiction here. But the federal circuit consolidated the 2 cases to put a stay, because both of the cases, whether it's in the International Trade Court or whether it's in the DC District Court, resulted in a block on Trump's tariffs.
Yeah.
So instead of hearing it in the DC Circuit Court and separately in the Federal Circuit Court just consolidated them both and put a temporary pause on it. Now, whether the appeals, I think the appeal will stay in the Federal Circuit Court before it goes to the Supreme Court. But we'll keep an eye on it. I don't think it's going to be taken out of the federal district and put into the DC circuit. Do you know what I mean?
Gotcha. I'm tracking.
It's confusing, but
gotcha. We will continue to break it. Well, Allison will continue to explain it to you. I'll put it on her because I'm gonna ask questions about it myself. But we will talk about right now what happened in Milwaukee. Milwaukee Judge Hannah Dugan's legal team has filed a supplemental motion to dismiss the charges against her. Now, you'll recall that they filed an initial motion to dismiss on the 10th Amendment and judicial immunity grounds, and we covered that on the previous episode. However, this motion is a supplement to their original motion, and now that it's been filed, the issue is fully briefed.
Yeah, so just some excerpts from this motion. It doesn't differ very much from the initial motion that you and I went over. But it says this is an extraordinary prosecution that poses a threat to federalism and judicial independence. In practical terms of American governmental design, consider starkly what it proposes. One morning, plainclothes federal agents with badges and baseball caps on a bench outside a state courtroom decided how they wanted a judge to control her courtroom and the people in it and the people near it. For not doing as they wished, the judge faces federal criminal charges. Judges, like legislators and executive officials, are not above the law, but they do enjoy a judicial immunity with deeper roots than the republic itself. Similarly, the Constitution makes the federal government the supreme sovereign.
This prosecution is barred by judicial immunity, long rooted in common law, and by the 10th Amendment and the Constitution's vertical separation of powers. The court can also avoid those constitutional questions by acknowledging that neither statute the government invokes reaches official acts of state court judges. The court faces the duty, then, of dismissing the indictment now. These proceedings have been barred from the start.
Yeah, so even if you don't think that all these official actions, the judge is immune from prosecution, you can't allow the federal government to reach into a state court and dictate terms. Because that goes against separation of powers. It goes on to say the difference between the first motion and the supplemental motion is that the lawyers for Judge Dugan get into the weeds a little bit about the allegations. So they write, the court must decide whether the conduct the indictment alleges falls within a judge's official functions at their perimeter or altogether outside the official duties and powers. The first count alleges that on Good Friday, April 18th, Judge Dugan knowingly concealed a defendant, EFR, who appeared that morning in her courtroom, aware that a warrant had been issued for his arrest. That count offers no detail, but the second count does. It concerns the same defendant. That count accuses her of corruptly endeavoring to influence, obstruct, and impede the due and proper administration of law, under which a pending proceeding, the administrative arrest of that man, was being had by a federal agency. She supposedly confronted ICE agents and told them falsely that they needed a judicial warrant, then directed them to leave the public hallway outside her courtroom to go to the chief judge's office a few feet away. She then addressed the defendant's case off the record while some of the agents were in the chief judge's office. Next, she directed the defendant and his lawyer out of her courtroom through a non-public jury door, causing him to emerge in the same public hallway.
Then, as courthouse video shows conclusively, after he finished in her courtroom, EFR emerged in the same public hallway where agents expected him. He emerged just a few feet from the back doors of the courtroom. At least 2 agents saw him walk into that hallway and followed him to the elevator. When and how they then decided to arrest him had nothing to do with Judge Dugan.
Yep. And it says this indictment breaks new ground, dismissing it will not. Since 1788, by its allocation of governmental power horizontally across 3 different branches, and vertically among the federal government, state governments, and people themselves, our Constitution has provided the hope and the means to hold power to principled public account. The indictment would change that. But the rule of law itself, here rightly in service of justice, long has barred what the indictment threatens. Judicial immunity forecloses this prosecution. So do the limits of federal power under the 10th Amendment. The court should dismiss the indictment. Pretty straightforward. Gave a lot of examples.
Not examples, play-by-play of what exactly was happening. I mean, and according to this, and I mean, I'm extremely biased here, they won't have an option except to dismiss. I don't see how this makes it to trial, citing all of the instances. That's the right word that I'm looking for them to dismiss this, the case law, the 10th Amendment, the immunity. Hell, they said it back all the way to 1788. Like, they have to dismiss this, but, weirder things have happened.
And even though her intent doesn't matter when it comes to her judicial immunity, if her intention was to not cause a ruckus right outside her door, but maybe 15 feet down where the second door was, that's her controlling her courtroom.
Yeah.
And this goes into a lot of detail about previous cases of judicial immunity, how a judge not only has control of what happens inside her courtroom, but outside her courtroom, and in fact, outside the courthouse, and sometimes reaching into homes of jurors, to ensure that you have, no jury like befoulment, like people aren't trying to intimidate jurors and stuff. So the judge has pretty broad immunity, pretty broad ability to decide what happens in and around her courtroom. And so her intentions as to why they took the back door are irrelevant when it comes to this kind of judicial immunity. So we'll see what they say. We'll see what the judge says in this case. And we'll stay on top of it for you. I do hope that these charges are dismissed. This is a violation of a judicial immunity, and it is a violation. Even if you don't think judges should be immune from this kind of thing, it's a violation of the 10th Amendment, where the federal government needs to stay TF out of state courts.
Yep.
So, all right, we got a couple more stories to get to. I can't wait for the Steve Bannon story, but we still have a couple more stories.
I can't either. It's going to be a good one.
Before that. But we have to take a quick break. Stick around. We'll be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back. We have some Hall of Fame patrons to thank. These are our heavy hitters, including Greg Kreimer, Suzanne Ashworth, Stephen Towle, Greg Robin Smith, a.k.a. Benjamin Franklin Live, Tiffany Trump was adopted, January 20 baby, We Will Survive, Clover's Tree 73, and the future is not looking bright. So thank you again for being a Hall of Fame patron. Again, we couldn't do this without you. It's so important, and we super appreciate you. Now, there's some new reporting out about the beleaguered Secretary of Defense and his motley team of idiot advisors. This comes from the Post. An enduring rift among Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's cadre of senior advisors has divided the Pentagon's front office and fueled internal speculation about his long-term viability in the cabinet post after several episodes that have attracted White House scrutiny. Man, if you attract White House scrutiny, bad you got to screw up.
Yeah, because basically everything just goes in this White House. But the conflict within Hegseth's inner circle persists even after he purged several political appointees in April and after attempts to portray a sense of unity among his remaining brain trust. His claims, however, are belied by continued behind-the-scenes dysfunction brought on by unresolved personality conflicts, inexperiences, vacancies in key leadership roles, and a steady-state paranoia over what political crisis could emerge next.
Yeah, man. When you have such a shady effing background, it's got to be like constantly looking over your shoulders, waiting for somebody to leak something you did in 1986. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Next up, it says perhaps the most combustible relationship among these aides is that of Eric Garrissey and Ricky Buria. I think it's Buria. Might be Buria. That's according to several people familiar. Garrissey, a retired soldier whom Hegseth has credited with mentoring him when they served together in Iraq, has voiced repeated concerns that Buria, until recently a military assistant to the defense secretary, has sought to marginalize colleagues to boost his own standing within the Trump administration. That's what the people said. Now, the tension boiled over in March when Garrissey learned he had been excluded from joining some of Hegseth's meetings during a multi-day trip across the Pacific Ocean. He blamed Buria for the perceived slight and told colleagues that he had upbraided the Marine Corps colonel during the trip, according to people familiar. The clash occurred right after Signalgate happened, by the way.
Man, he must have had his hands full of Signalgate and now this. Garrissey has also voiced disgust about complaints emerging from the White House. He told fellow Pentagon staff members that military aides working closely with Donald Trump's inner sanctum have come to view Buria as a self-important and quick to Bigfoot others to get more time with Hegseth and other senior administration officials.
He sounds like a handler. Buria sounds like a handler.
He does, doesn't he?
This is like high school. Oh my God.
But that makes for good entertainment. So
I guess. Like Matt Gaetz is like, are there any girls in there? Frick. So,
oh my gosh, we got to keep laughing, right?
Friction between the two senior advisors remains palpable and is emblematic of the instability that reigns at the Pentagon as Hegseth attempts to regain his footing after multiple scandals that irked the White House, alarmed Congress, and left the former Fox News personality on the defensive. Oh, good thing you're the Secretary of Defense because you spend all your time on defense. Since joining the Trump administration, Garrissey has run a little-known organization called the Joint Service Interagency Advisory Group that includes numerous special ops troops and representation from other government agencies. A core focus of the group has been how to counter Mexican drug cartels. I guess the answer is to invite 17 Sinaloa cartel family members to live in the United States. That's a highly sensitive subject, by the way, that has exacerbated the uneasiness between Trump and his counterpart in Mexico City, the amazing president, Claudia Sheinbaum. Buria, who was a pilot in the Marine Corps before moving to the Pentagon, has a good relationship with Hegseth that has apparently bloomed more recently.
Buria's responsibilities and power quickly expanded when in February he temporarily took on the role of a 3-star general after Hegseth fired a senior military assistant, Lieutenant General for short, without disclosing any reason. Well, we can guess what it was.
Yeah.
You know, Hegseth has removed several top military leaders, including a disproportionate number of women since his arrival at the Pentagon in January.
Now, Buria irritated numerous senior military officials in the building, according to people familiar. As the temporary assignment came to a close, rather than return to his role as junior military assistant, he submitted a request to retire from the Corps and become a senior civilian advisor to Hegseth. Among those whom have advocated for Buria is Hegseth's wife, Jennifer, who has fulfilled an unofficial and unorthodox role shaping Pentagon policy and affairs that has unnerved defense officials.
Shit, it unnerved me too. The wife doing it, like Hegseth wasn't qualified, and definitely his wife isn't. So, but around that time, Hegseth fired 3 senior defense officials, all political appointees he accused of leaking sensitive information to the news media. Shortly after their removal, the 3, Dan Caldwell, Darren Selnick, and Colin Carroll, issued a scathing statement saying they had been slandered and that the claims leveled against them were baseless.
Yeah, and following that, those 3 people leaked like a solid drip of Signalgate stories to reporters. Hegseth's first chief of staff, Joe Casper, also left his role in April as Pentagon officials privately questioned his ability to keep the front office organized and manage disputes among aides. Hegseth then moved to have Buria installed as his chief of staff. But other Republicans appealed to the White House to prevent that from happening because Buria's warm relationships with officials in the Biden administration. That's why the White House doesn't want Hegseth to make, Buria permanent.
I knew it was something.
To appoint their own chief of staff. It's because he's a holdover from the Biden administration.
And they hate that man. Shout out to Joe Biden, by the way. Hegseth also has cracked down on media access in the Pentagon, issuing a memo just ahead of Memorial Day weekend that said reporters were allowed to roam too freely and would now require government escorts in most of the building. He cast the move as an effort to protect national security. Oh, by the way, speaking of Memorial Day, that's what I mentioned. Back to my Ukraine story real quick. We, on Memorial Day in America, I was helping out the Ukrainian people on Memorial Day. It was just a little symbolic that stood out to me. So yeah, I meant to say that earlier, but it was Memorial Day when I was over there. So
that's amazing. Let's get back to the high school drama at the Pentagon.
Yes, please.
An aide to Hegseth named Parnell also told reporters that Kingsley Wilson will become the next Pentagon press secretary. Now, since joining the administration, Kingsley Wilson has been dogged by scrutiny of her past commentary on social media, including a claim she made last year that the Great Replacement theory, which baselessly posits that there's an organized plan to overwhelm predominantly Western countries with immigrants, is not a right-wing conspiracy theory. It's reality. So she's a Great Replacement theorist. Now, Kingsley Wilson has also drawn backlash on social media for attacking Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, calling him, quote, an entitled slur for a little person that I am not going to say.
Your name is Kingsley. Shut up. No offense to anybody else named Kingsley out there. Just her. Two others who also recently joined Hegseth's inner circle as senior advisors, Justin Fulcher and Patrick Weaver, come to their jobs with a shortfall of relevant experience. Well, that tracks. People familiar with the matter said. Fulcher, 32, who was part of billionaire Elon Musk's U.S. DOGE service, which has sought to drastically slash government spending and flatten the federal workforce. In 2012, after dropping out of college, he co-founded RingMD, a startup telehealth company in Singapore. After a dispute with investors, the company declared bankruptcy.
Oh, so he was moving jobs overseas. Cool.
Yep, seems like it.
Hegseth said in a recent interview on Fox News with a friend and former colleague, Will Kane, that he very much feels that he has the right team around him. Oh, what a shit show.
Yeah.
Just, my God.
The right team, like for what, the week? Like, I mean, the
right team to pick prom theme for 2025.
The Great Replacement theory. Yeah, they're replacing y'all asses at your jobs every other week. Like
the real Great Replacement theory.
That's the real Great Replacement theory. What is going on here? Like, whatever.
Man, oh man. All right.
Come on, y'all. Come on, 2028.
I know. Well, we're almost to the Steve Bannon story. We just got another quick story ahead of that, but we do have to take one last quick break. Everybody stick around. We'll be right back.
All right, y'all. Welcome back. All right, just a couple more stories for you, so hang tight in your seat. First up from CBS, U.S. Capitol Police Chief Thomas Manger, my former chief who took charge of the department in the difficult months after the U.S. Capitol siege, is retiring from his position Friday after the January 6, 2021 Capitol riot. He helped rebuild the department's shrunken staff, beefed up recruitment efforts, and bolstered the agency's intelligence operations and communications to fix weaknesses revealed by the breach of the Capitol.
Manger told CBS News he faced stiff challenges when he arrived in the job in 2021, saying the department as a whole had lost confidence in the prior leadership as a result of what happened. And there were big things that were identified as the things that needed to be fixed as quickly as we could fix them. Things like the intelligence failures, that's a big one, the communication failures, the equipment failures, the training failures, and leadership failures. All of those things needed to be addressed immediately.
And I think he did a fantastic job. Manger, a former local police chief in Fairfax County, Virginia, and Montgomery County, Maryland, where I live now, successfully advocated for increases in funding to improve hiring, equipment, and operations. We now have a world-class intelligence operation. We are significant players in the intelligence community in the Washington, D.C. region, and frankly, all over the country, Manger said. Whereas before, we were consumers of information. The FBI would give us intelligence. Other agencies would give us intelligence. Now we are gathering our own. That is growth.
Yeah, that's amazing. Manger has been critical of the pardons issued by Trump to free Capitol rioters who beat, clubbed, and gassed Capitol Police and other officers during the attack on the Capitol. He told CBS News that when Mr. Trump issued those 1,500 pardons to the suspected and convicted rioters when he took office, quote, it was probably one of my worst days in the job. He also blasted conspiracy theories about January 6th to continue to circulate on social media, saying, "My folks were here on January 6th. They were part of what went on. They were assaulted. They were in fights. Many of them were injured. They know exactly what happened on January 6th. For somebody to make up some story that, oh, it wasn't that bad, it is just not true." What a chilling message to law enforcement, because we've got a job to do and we don't care what the issue is. We don't care what side of the coin you're on any particular issue, because we have a job to do to maintain public order and keep the peace.
Yeah, shout out to Chief Manger. I think he did a fantastic job. And think about this for a second. A lot of times police departments all across the country have to answer to their county council or, your local state legislature or whatever. Those are the people that the police chiefs of districts and towns have to answer to. I think with Montgomery County, there are 9 or 8 council members. In Congress, think about the 435 members he has to answer to. And who's in the majority now? The people who want to whitewash January 6th. So I shout out to my former chief, for standing up to his the stakeholders, his bosses in Congress, and shooting down with authority the conspiracy theories about January 6th. So, All right, now we move on to our last story. All right, we don't have any Rudy news or Pillow Man news, but we do have some bad news for Steve Bannon. White House advisor Steve Bannon has suffered a legal setback after the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals denied his request to consider vacating his contempt of Congress conviction. Bannon began a 4-month prison sentence on January 1, 2024, after he was found guilty in 2022 of 2 counts of contempt of Congress for failing to respond to a subpoena issued by the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th riot at the Capitol. He was released in October.
Now, Bannon, who was an advisor to Trump in the first year of his first term, was charged with contempt of Congress, like you said, after failing to appear for a deposition and refusing to produce any documents that were requested by the Select Committee. Bannon appealed the charges multiple times. The Supreme Court said no. They denied his request to stave off his sentence, resulting in him serving his prison sentence in full in 2024. His request for the D.C. Circuit Court to vacate his charges stems from his argument that his refusal to comply with his subpoena was not done willfully, and that he only defied the subpoena at the request of his legal representation, which, by the way, is not a defense, who warned that complying would result in exposing privileged information. No, dear, all you got to do is show up and plead the fifth and say nothing, and you would not have gone to prison.
Yeah, you don't get the opportunity to just not show up, So that's why I don't believe that was legal advice. That's a lie. But 5 circuit court judges did not agree with the argument, with Judge Brad Garcia writing, "As Bannon sees it, then a conviction for failing to appear at all would require a showing of bad faith, but a conviction for appearing and refusing to answer relevant questions would not. I'm skeptical that Congress intended to enact such a scheme. Imagine a witness who genuinely believed his lawyer's advice that a privilege justified refusing to testify on subjects listed in the subpoena. On Bannon's reading, that witness could not be convicted if he declined to appear before the congressional committee altogether. Yet, he could be convicted if he appeared but declined to answer specific questions based on the same advice." That construction makes little sense, which it doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah,
show up and plead the fifth.
Basically,
but don't just not show up.
You're an idiot. That construction makes little sense is the nice way of saying you're stupid. Bannon has already been pardoned by Trump in the last days of his first term over the former fraud charges, right, for the We Build the Wall scheme, which he was awaiting trial for. He was supposed to go to court over allegedly defrauding donors in Trump's 2016 campaign. The 2021 presidential pardon only covered his federal charges, though. But in February of 2025, Bannon pled guilty to his New York state charges for defrauding donors who gave money toward building a wall at the border. Bannon was found to have diverted hundreds of thousands of dollars from donors to associates, and Bannon's plea deal resulted in him avoiding jail time. And if people still follow people who gave money to Bannon, who he then funneled into his yachts and his friends and
deserve it.
Cars and money, and they still listen to that guy,
you get what you deserve. You deserved what you got. So
I don't even know what's wrong with you if you're still If you're still
Unbelievable.
listening to Bannon, but he loses.
He loses,
lost.
and that is good news for us. So we like to cover a little bit of good news here too, you all on the show. So
I'm sure he will go to the Supreme Court, and they will be like, "What?
Yeah, get out of here."
Yeah, when you can't persuade this Supreme Court to let you off the hook, man. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see, though. I don't put anything past the Supreme Court.
Let's knock on wood, right?
Right.
Nothing has happened yet, so.
Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see what the Supreme Court does, and we'll let you know here. Thank you all so much for listening. And Harry, thanks so much for taking time between air raid sirens halfway across the globe to record our bonus episode for patrons this past weekend. We all appreciate you so very much. And I'm so glad you're safe. And, I mentioned that Biden had taken a similar train ride, but we didn't reveal where you were. I was thinking of when Biden visited Ukraine.
I did too. I was like, man, am I on the same train route? Because we took the train from Ukraine because we had the vehicles to drive over there. So we drove, but we took the train station in Kyiv to back to Poland.
I think that might have been the same
maybe
train.
The same train ride. So, and it was crazy because as you're driving around, or not as you're riding, we're driving too, but we're on the train. And as you get closer to the airports, you look out and you see all the Patriot defense systems surrounding the airport, just in case, some missiles happen to make their way into the border of Poland. So.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for doing that and getting that aid to where it needed to be and talking to the people on the ground. I think that's amazing. And it's nice to hear that, we have Americans on the ground in Ukraine showing that we still support them despite what our government is doing.
Definitely. And that's important. And honestly, what I took away from it, they need all the money, they need the help, they need the aid, but that moral support, it means more than you can, because while they're out there on the front lines, it means they're actually fighting for something and there are people that they're fighting for. So it makes a difference.
They're the tip of the spear. They're the front line of democracy for the West. And
yes, indeed.
I always appreciate what they're doing. And that Zelensky personally handled this Operation Spiderweb. It's so badass.
Love it.
If you get a chance to look at the maps or read anything in more detail about how this operation went down, just stunning. Some of the videos are just incredible. Well pulled off. Nobody knew about it. Just fucking so fantastic. 18 months, not a single leak. Just so cool. All right, everybody. Thank you again for listening. Thanks to our patrons. If you want to become a patron, it's patreon.com/aisle45pod, AISLE45POD. And if you want to follow me on social media, I'm everywhere on social media at Mueller, She Wrote. And Harry, you're at Libra Dunn.
Libra Dunn.
You're a Libra.
Follow me.
You're a Libra, my friend, which means Libras have, by the way, the best smile in all of the zodiac.
This is true.
Yep. And we will see you next week. And patrons will see you on the bonus episode this weekend. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Allison Gill.
Harry Dunn. Thanks, y'all.
Cleanup on Aisle 45 is written, researched, and produced by Allison Gill, with editing by Molly Hockey. Our art and logo design are by Joelle Reeder and Moxie Design Studios, and our music is composed and performed by Adam Orr. Cleanup on Aisle 45 is a proud member of the MSW Media Network, a collection of creator-owned podcasts dedicated to news, politics, and justice. For more information, visit mswmedia.com. MSW Media.